Hi, this is LaDerby Porterreal with SIIA. Thank you for joining us today in our kickoff webinar for our School Technology series. Today we'll be focusing on Rio Rancho and the New Mexico Public Schools. I do realize there are a number of non-SIIA members on the line today, so here are just a quick overview of what SIIA is about and what the Education Division does. The SIIA is the principal association for the software and digital content industry. The Education Division represents developers of educational software, applications, digital content, and other companies that address educational needs. Just a few notes there on how you can get involved with SIIA if you're a member. Also a list of upcoming events. Our next event is the Education Business Forum, which is in December in New York City at the McGraw-Hill Conference Center. If you're interested in that event, the website is listed there. We have our spring conference, which is the Education Industry Summit. That's usually in the spring, as I mentioned, in San Francisco. If you're interested in membership or just getting more information, you can contact Eric Friedel. His contact information is listed there. Also, if you want to stay up to date with the latest industry news or latest SIIA news, do follow us on our multiple social media sites there on Facebook, Twitter, and LinkedIn. Also, just a quick overview of our key upcoming initiatives. We do have the Education market survey there. If you're interested in that, please visit the website. And the survey is very short and very confidential. So again, if you're interested, I do suggest that you visit the website. Also, the Cody Awards. We have an upcoming deadline. Nominations for the Cody Awards is tomorrow, September 20th. After that, if you do submit a nomination, there will be a late fee, so I do encourage you to do that as soon as possible. Also, the Innovation Incubator Program, which is geared towards startups. You can learn more about it using the URL there, and the deadline to apply is October 5th. Here is just a quick overview of the education team. I'm LaDerby Porterreal, the program manager in the Education Division. I manage the Innovation Incubator Program and assist Karen Billings, which is she's also on the line, developing our program for our multiple events throughout the year. Karen, you should be unmuted, so if you want to say a couple words, that would be great.
Yeah, just that we're really very pleased to have this first initial webcast today on the School Technology series, and pleased that Amprey could help us put that together. We're planning to do a number of these over this school year and look forward to hearing what the districts have to say. We're also hosting a global series. We've got a series called EdMarket 101. So there are a number of ways for our members and other folks in the industry to learn more about what's going on in the field of education technology.
Great. Thank you, Karen. And I will go ahead and turn it over to Mark, and he'll say a few words about our partnership with Amprey & Associates and what we'll be covering today.
Okay, great. Thanks, LaDerby. Thanks, Karen. So last month, SIIA announced a partnership with Amprey & Associates to bring education leaders from leading and large school districts around the country in front of SIIA members so you can better understand their educational goals and needs and how that's translating to what kinds of technologies they're looking for, and also what are some of the issues they're running into with regard to selecting, implementing those various technologies, whether it be software applications, online learning services, digital content applications, etc. So this first one, as noted, we're hearing from district leaders from the Rio Rancho School District in New Mexico. And in a moment, I will introduce our guests today. Let me take a moment to turn things over to Fred Woodward, with Amprey and Associates, who will give a bit of background on their firm.
Yes, thank you. And it's a pleasure for us to be a part of this conference and to have the opportunity to work with SIIA in bringing this forward. And first of all, we're a Maryland-based consulting firm specializing in education systems and operations. And our mission is to make a positive difference from K through 16 education. Our founder and CEO, Dr. Walter Amprey, served as superintendent of public instruction for the Baltimore City Public Schools from 1991 through 1997. Dr. Amprey is well respected as an industry leader in developing innovative programs that combine government and private industry experience to improve the operation and effectiveness of any educational environment. What we do is partner with companies that develops and organizes and implements programs for the education environment. So we introduce and promote and foster mutually benefit partnerships with school districts and identified companies who provide those programs and services designed to improve staff performance and our student achievement. We also develop and organize and implement and support innovative educational programs and host events designed to solve problems or address current education issues. And finally, we provide training and technical assistance in the areas of strategic planning, organizational development, professional development, curriculum development and design, instructional supervision, support, and assessment for learning and program management and evaluation. Thank you very much.
Great.
Turn it back to you, Mark.
Very much, Fred, and we're really pleased to partner with Amprey and Associates on this series. They're a trusted ally of many school districts around the country and can really help us connect the voice of the educator to the SI membership. So with that, let me introduce our speakers today and turn it over to them. Throughout, please use the chat box to raise questions, and we'll either address those if they're clarifying questions along the way or get to them toward the end. So joining us today are from the Rio Rancho School District. Carl Leppelman is Associate Superintendent of Curriculum and Instruction, where he oversees the Department of Curriculum and Instruction, which includes staff training, management of grant funds. He also oversees the Office of Special Education in the district, federal and bilingual programs, fine arts assessment and data, and it sounds like, Carl, there's not much that doesn't come under your portfolio. Mr. Leppelman has served as an assistant principal, and executive director for curriculum planning and assessment prior to his current position. We're also pleased to be joined by Karen Bollinger, is Director of Education Technology for the Rio Rancho School District. She supervises a team of education technology specialists and serves as a liaison between the technology department and others, including the curriculum and instructional group. She has over 12 years of classroom teaching experience and is a Level 3 licensed instructional leader. So with that, let me turn things over to Carl and Karen. Thank you for joining us.
Well, thank you, and this is Carl Leppelman. Good afternoon, and for some of you out there, maybe good morning. It really is a pleasure for Karen and myself to share some of the strengths we're seeing in our district, as well as some of the challenges we're facing with many changes across New Mexico, of course, across the country with technology. I sort of felt that maybe we could give you sort of a quick overview of maybe what our district looks like. So let's start with maybe the demographics related to our district. We were at one time a very fast-growing district. In 1994, we were formed. There was an order of creation. I think we roughly had about 4,000 students. We now have around 17,000. Our largest employer is Intel as far as manufacturing, so we have a high need for highly educated and highly technical workforces in our local community. What we're facing now is a significant change, as all of us across the country, in terms of demographics. As we started the district, we were about, I believe, 15 to 20% free and reduced. We're now over 50% or close to that. And so I think this is across the country as we've seen the economic downturn, and we're still looking at those changing demographics and how do we meet the needs of all students. And so as you can see, we have large schools. Our elementary average is about 800 students per school, 800 to 900. We have 2 large comprehensive high schools, range anywhere from 23 to 2,500 each. And then we've had 2 alternative high schools, Independence and Rio Rancho Cyber Academy, both serving different types of students. Within our district, this is sort of unusual. In our city, we only have 1 charter school, and that is not a local district school. That is actually a state-sponsored charter, and that is a small school. And I think in general, unlike Albuquerque Public Schools, it's a very large school district. They have many. It seems like we're meeting the needs of most of our parents. So in that, we don't see a lot of charters that are coming into our community. So we're diverse. You can see the diversity there. Our largest growing population is the Hispanic population, and we certainly have a mission that's clear, and it's really clearly focused on each and every student. And as you know, with Common Core, if we were to update our mission, it'd be focusing on, as everyone is now, making all students college or career ready. So thank you, and I think we'll move on to the next slide. If you have questions about that, please put that in the chat area there. We'll try to answer those. Okay. We have a wide range of technologies in our classroom, and I would say we've led the state in terms of getting that technology into like a digital footprint in every classroom. We're not quite there, but to have that accomplished, obviously you have to have staff to support those things. So we did make a commitment years ago. Actually, I think we made that commitment as we opened the district, that we would use technology as a tool to integrate instruction. And so we did place an ed tech in every campus, and that role of that specialist is to really support the instructional program, support the teachers, the delivery of the curriculum, instruction, and assessment. The technical side, we're a district that's very lean in that area because we have 1 technician per every 3 or 4 sites, and I think Karen can talk later about how many machines that means per technician or pieces of devices. We have certainly a mixture of things, but we have traditional computer labs. We do have some mini labs in classrooms, but we're not fully operational there. We have many mobile labs, and I won't go through the entire thing, but in general, we've tried to take all of these items you see on this slide and make sure the equipment's there, that it's functioning, obviously. That's the foundational. And I would say, Karen, that we're probably 90% there in terms of making sure we have the actual foundation for teachers to use these tools in their instruction.
All right, and so hello everyone, this is Karen. I think a big part of why our equipment is used in the schools is those ed techs in the schools that help the teachers integrate that into their curriculum. And we do, of course, have a very active classroom web pages, district school and classroom, of course, parent access to grades at the upper secondary level, and a data portal for students. And I mention all these because those are very important communication tools between students, teachers, and parents, as you all know, and are very prevalent in our district. Teachers are using the information from the student testing data warehouse to drive instruction. A few things, initiatives going on in our district at the high school level. We have a couple of projects. One that was implemented this year is the Cyber Patriot program, where high school students are actually involved in a class on cybersecurity and learning those skills in class, as well as an after-school club that will participate in the competition, national competition with the Cyber Patriot program. Also, we're just about to kick off a digital media project in our schools, which is a collaborative effort with economic development, higher education, DreamWorks, and our teachers in the classroom to actually teach some skills in film animation and mobile app development, which you know, our high school kids are quite capable of producing some professional quality work. But the idea there is, of course, to prepare a pool of talent here in Rio Rancho area for the film industry, because New Mexico is really looking towards, we have a lot of films done in this state and looking to do more. So that's one big project going on here. We also have a true blended learning campus, the Rio Rancho Cyber Academy, which serves students 6 through 12. And they do primarily a lot of their work on their own and from home, but they do come into school a couple times a week as various grade levels. And we also are piloting the Bring Your Own Device at that school, looking towards the future of which we'll talk about a little bit later as well, but the mobile devices and actually allowing students and staff to bring their own devices, and how do you manage that. So we're piloting that at the Rio Rancho Cyber Academy.
Okay, thank you, Karen. What are some of the New Mexico, and I don't know if we want to change it as a mandate or a required opportunity. I think across the country, obviously, we're in second order change. One of the changes, obviously, we're up under the PARC initiative in terms of the implementation of Common Core state standards. And we actually said to our staff 2 years ago, we'll suspend all new initiatives related to anything other than the Common Core. And I think in some regards, we may have taken that too literally and started looking at and not looking at how technologies could support that Common Core. And I think obviously with change, it's a significant change. It's one we support, our board supports, but we know technology will provide a huge part in that role. What I want to sort of talk about, and I think mentioned earlier in the prior slide, is that we have all of these things, all this equipment. But our perspective is that adding these tools, these things, without changing pedagogy is a waste of resources. And I think that's where the rub always becomes. And I think obviously we've done that. We've been all guilty of that, I guess, when we put things into classrooms. But from my perspective on the instructional side, at least, and Karen's also, is that critical for that, and I'm probably preaching to the choir, is the one thing Rio Rancho that we've tried to do, and I think we've done fairly well, is when we bring in new equipment or technology, and it's going to be used, we provide the professional development around the use of that. In this way, we see changes in the curriculum and instruction, and it looks different. So until we see that change in the classroom, it really doesn't matter. So we're looking for certain skills in the teacher, certain types of look-fors in the classroom to make sure those things are changing. The Common Core opens up a huge opportunity, but with opportunity comes risk. And I think what we have to do is make sure as teachers look at resources, they look not just to the textbook. The textbook's important, but we need to look at other electronic media, open educational resource, so those types of items. And so we're currently now, we are one district out of 89 in the state, and only 2 delayed the adoption of mathematics, and we were one of the 2. Because what we found is a lot of the resources were not aligned to the Common Core. As you know, everything now is aligned to the Common Core. That's a little humor there. And we want to make sure that what we select, and Karen's part of that, working closely with the staff in selecting resources that support a particular standard or learning target in the Common Core. So all these other issues are probably not, in my opinion, at least in the state of New Mexico, the most important is Common Core. Obviously, teacher evaluation is very important. It's something that's sweeping the nation. What do we do to make sure teachers are effective and that we're being held accountable to make sure that instruction is a high level? So we see those two working collectively in unison, and we're working with teachers to try to get there. it's a struggle right now, but we think technology will help us to do that. School grading system, we spent 3 years trying to look at what's best practices in grading, and guess what? We're just now getting a white paper to the board in some direction there, but we're using our technologies within PowerSchool and with other tools to say, okay, what should we do differently in terms of grading within the classroom? And that's been really exciting. All these testing things, you've probably heard of DIBELS, levels. The NWA is really maps out of the Northwest Educational Association. These are tools we use to monitor student progress, benchmark assessments. And finally, PARC online testing window. That is, for all of you out there, I'm sure if you're a PARC state, going to have many challenges. Our largest challenge is pure equipment, pure abilities to, we may have the infrastructure, the broadband to come in to do that, but we certainly have limits in terms of what we can do to test online. So I think that's the keys that we see across our state right now. So Karen?
We do have a question that just came up, Carl.
Yeah.
It says, what pedagogical changes are you making?
In terms of the Common Core?
Well, this is Mark Schneiderman. So you mentioned a few moments ago that the technology will not have the greatest possible impact unless you make related pedagogical changes. So the question is, what do you mean by that? What kinds of changes need to happen to your curriculum, to your instruction?
Well, I think there's a varied one. I'm going to have Karen actually defer to her a little bit because she's just came out of the classroom related to, and she works most close in that area. So let me defer that over to you a little bit.
Okay, well, significant changes in the classroom related to, I'm not sure if this is what Carl was referring to, but how we approach the whole teaching and the integration of that technology and the depth of knowledge, really focusing on the changing how it's being implemented in the classrooms so that technology is utilized with the students to acquire that depth of knowledge and for the student-centered learning, personalized learning, and those kinds of things. Is that what you were referring to, Carl?
Right. Proficiency, obviously all students, if you look at a group of students, you're going to have a wide range of abilities in the classroom. Is that right? And I would say probably more individualizing and challenging students at the higher levels, because what we're finding in our district is if we're teaching we have students that really need to be extended in their lesson. The text complexity is a good example in the Common Core. We found that if we go in an average classroom, we found that students were scoring well below, in other words, they were scoring well below in their Lexile level in terms of their abilities to read. So what can technology do to help expand students, extend their learning? There's one example. How do teachers use that to integrate and get the content across in terms of the depth of understanding of the Common Core? So I think that there's a lot of technologies out there we're just not bringing to the table just yet. And as you know, the learner, we're immigrants, the digital immigrant versus the native. And what we're finding is students can learn, what we find is time is now is the constant in a traditional classroom, and what is learning is a variable. I think technology we've gone back to the classroom and seen those teachers that are integrating technologies that engage students in the learning at a high level of depth of knowledge in terms of complexity of the standard are achieving at a much higher rate. And we only have these students in class, 6.5 hours a day, 182 days a year, if we're lucky in the state of New Mexico. We need to be able to extend the day. We need to take not only the technologies in the classroom, what can we do beyond the day, such as School Fusion, some of the other technologies that we're using to extend the learning and the communication between the teacher and that learner, and then how to engage with the parents in that same thing. So those are some things we're seeing in the classroom. And how do you get to if we get to learning styles, and how are teachers using those technologies to reach different students? So that's what I was referring to. So the PD for that is critical, because just putting a smart board in the classroom doesn't necessarily get to that goal.
Thank you.
Okay, so obviously one of the biggest challenges for school districts across the nation is preparing for these PARCC or the Smarter Balanced testing that's coming up in 2014-15. For most of New Mexico, I would say one of their first and biggest challenges is the network infrastructure. However, Rio Rancho IT department has done a fabulous job the last year or two in upgrading our systems. We have increased bandwidth at all our sites, wireless at many. We're working on wireless for the rest. So that's not really our primary focus. Our concern with our size and number of students at each school is devices and time and space for the testing, given that the state wants all students tested in a 2-week window. It's a difficult challenge in having enough devices. We are not at close to a 1-to-1 with our district. So having devices and time and space for students to actually complete the testing is a challenge for us. And then, of course, we need to make sure that teachers are preparing those students not only in the Common Core, but also in basic technology skills to be able to do the test. So are they prepared for keyboarding and these other skills that are going to be expected of them on the test, beginning with the third graders? How's their keyboarding skills and how are they at doing these tasks to demonstrate learning? So we are looking at products that have these kind of activities built in, the simple drag and drop, cut and paste, shade text, all those things that students are going to be able to need to do on the test. And of course, limited funding is a constant challenge. With the state of New Mexico, are we ready, is the question. So 3 things the state is requiring us to complete, actually in order to be eligible for any funding to support the PARCC infrastructure or devices. There are 3 things that they're asking us to do to help us prepare. First is a technology readiness tool that helps us to assess if our devices meet the minimum specifications, if we have enough of them, if we have staff to support, and bandwidth. And the map you see there shows the schools in Rio Rancho. The green indicates that they are, there's one school that is completely ready. That is the Cyber Academy I mentioned earlier. So they're the only school that shows completely green. All the other schools, what that indicates is the green is their bandwidth is good to go, but the red is indicating a device deficiency. So we are looking at how we're going to meet the need for those devices and what are we going to do. Mobile lab carts are primarily what we're hoping to be able to purchase, but we'll need lots of them. So that's how we're trying to meet that need. Of course, that brings a whole other list of challenges as well. But school speed test is another thing, which is, again, the bandwidth, which we're not really concerned about, as you can see from the map there. And the third piece is kind of to me, it's the most interesting because obviously we don't need technology just for testing. We need it for preparing our students for the future, for that whole college and career readiness. And this Project 24 survey is a self-assessment for districts to use as creating a vision and a plan for how you're going to use that technology to affect student learning. And this is the Project 24's framework and gears that's displayed here. And what this survey has done is we have a team of us meeting together to look at how prepared we are in addressing the needs of creating these digital learners in our schools. And so, of course, it involves several gears, and professional learning, budget and resources, curriculum instruction, use of time, technology and the infrastructure, data and assessment, academic support, all of these gears working together to ensure that we are providing the best student achievement that we can and the learning environment for the students that we can. So this Project 24 survey, we just formed a team and a committee that's reviewing it with some leaders throughout the district, and I think this is going to really help push us forward to the next level in terms of technology in our schools. I think Rio Rancho has always done a great job, but we are clearly not where we want to be, which is, constant, of course, which is a good thing. Moving on, so what are we doing for digital, what are we looking at for digital literacy and the Common Core standards? Well, of course, we want our students to first those technology skills I mentioned earlier, they need to complete the test, but we need to go much more beyond that with how are they actually learning in the classroom, and what kinds of digital learning is going on in our classrooms. This all requires high, access to online resources, collaboration tools, and of course, as Carl mentioned earlier, we want to make sure we have professional development for teachers with any of our either products or software programs. Ideally, that we have looking at products that have online tutorials and things to help support the teachers because time is such an issue. And of course, this requires a strong collaboration between IT and C&I departments. But when we're looking at software and things, we are looking at the alignment to the Common Core state standards. And as Carl sort of jokingly mentioned earlier, that seems to be something some folks are just slapping on their products, and we want to make sure they really are aligned to Common Core. That's been a big concern of us from vendors who profess that they're aligned, and then we're finding aren't really too. I don't know if you want to speak to that more, Carl, but that is a concern. We are looking at that. We're looking at depth of content versus the breadth. We don't really want vendors to tell us they can cover a lot of stuff. We need to focus more on the depth of content and the depth of knowledge the students will get. Again, teacher training I mentioned. Another issue I've also seen is a cross-device platforms. I've been to some presentations where we have it available for the iPad, and while I support Apple and its educational uses in the iPad, and we do have some iPads in our district being used for specific purposes, we really are looking for products that work with our Windows system and our Windows environment for many reasons, which I'll mention, go over in just a minute as well. But obviously, I've asked several vendors about is there developed also for a Windows-based tablet or an Android device, and am often told no. So I'm hoping that's changing, and we're going to be seeing more products that are supported on a variety of devices, of all devices, not just the iPad.
Hey, Karen, let me, if I could again interrupt you and Carl, because this is information I want to go a little bit more in depth on a couple issues, if I could.
Of course.
The content alignment issue, certainly a challenge all the way around in the field. Could you help, this is a very it's a big topic, but could you take a couple minutes to talk about what are what specifically are you looking for around Common Core? Are there certain tools or rubrics or criteria that you're using to determine alignment so that content providers can understand those metrics and goals?
It's a great question. And
yeah, go ahead.
Okay. I wish I had. Alana Coleman is my point person for the Common Core. We do have a strategic plan that came out of the data center out of UT, and we can even send it to people if they'd like to see what we're looking at. But there is a rubric that teams of teachers look at for the 3 major shifts in the ELA and the major shifts in mathematics around the 8 mathematical practices. So what we're finding is, all of us out there probably know the shifts and probably understand where we're trying to go in terms of fewer and deeper in terms of, let's say, mathematics. What we're finding is publishers, whether they're textbook and even some of the software, will say it's aligned to Common Core, but in reality they just repackage the old. Could be a game, it could be a tool, a software program, or it could be a textbook. So we do have, we get from achieve.org, which is a really great, achievethecore.org has a great tool there, and I wish I had this in the PowerPoint with a link to it, for you to go in and look at a particular standard or domain in the actual Common Core, and does it address a particular standard, focus standard, and does that particular instructional resource meet that? So I think PARC and I think the work of many of the achievethecore.org and others have some great resources And that's what we're using. Basically, we're even on look-fors as we go through classrooms and instructional leaders, principals. We use the tools. It's called evidence-based decision tool to look at what would you see in a shift. What would be a green flag? What would be a red flag that you would see in the instruction? And then where I see the gap is the technology. I really do. I see that even in our district. In terms of what technologies, how would technology be used to achieve that particular, I'd call it a learning target, okay, within the Common Core. And so I think what I'd like to do is do a follow-up and get you some tools, but they basically, the rubric should be related, a direct alignment to the Common Core. And if anybody out there has other resources, I would like to hear about them.
Someone posted the link.
Oh, thank you. It's posted. Thank you. Appreciate that. And there are many others, but you got to be careful.
And the other thing that you raised, and I think maybe you're going to get into it soon, especially you, Karen, but is that issue of platforms and the diversity of platforms, and how do providers know which platform to build to. The market is very diverse. There's issues of legacy resources versus newer applications and the varieties of there. There's sometimes there are age differences for certain applications or trending towards certain platforms. So I think it's a challenge for the entire field. And certainly the goal is to have devices or resources rather that run on any device, but not always easy to accomplish. So I don't know what obviously you indicated what you're doing in your district with regard to the emphasis on the Windows. Obviously, a lot more is shifting to browser-based and hosted models. How does that play into what you're looking at?
Yeah, we are looking at a lot of web-based products. In fact, we do use some, of course. And now with our recent, to be honest, up until this last year, our network infrastructure was weak in some spots, and so supporting those web-based products was rather difficult because of our bandwidth issues. But now that has been somewhat, alleviated, and we're able to move forward from that, we are looking at doing more of that. We are doing more of that. Even it wasn't long ago, that maybe 2 years ago, that we didn't even allow any video streaming into our classes because of what it would do to the network. So we are in a much better position now to look at those kinds of products. Some of our concern has been, access for all, and again, with our limited devices in the schools, and then also if you're wanting them to be able to access these things from home, as Carl mentioned earlier, with 50% free and reduced lunch, you can imagine that we do have a significant population that doesn't have that sort of access outside of the school day. So we are looking at them, but again, as those challenges, I'm sure aren't new. You haven't heard. I'm sure you've heard these before. But these are the types of challenges that we're looking at with those products. So, even something like with this math adoption of going to a web-based product versus a traditional textbook. Well, what does that do for those students who don't have that access from home and also don't have now a hard copy textbook to take home? So yes, we are interested in those products. We know that we need to look at them, but primarily the ones we're using now are ones that are used in the school during the school day only, and we don't expect them necessarily to have, or don't require that they access that from home.
Except with cyber, where we use Genuity, which used to, you've heard of E2020, it's now Genuity. And we've actually been recognized as a very high-performing. In fact, our cyber, by the way, just on the side, is the highest-performing alternative high school in the state, and actually the highest-performing high school in our district as far as proficiency on the standards-based assessment. And we have a very high standard because we have the highest-performing district. But so the work they've done there is pretty incredible. Again, it's a smaller environment, definitely focused all around technology and how you work. Pedagogically different with students in terms of the use of that technology.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
So we've sort of mentioned many of these things, but of course IT's concerns and considerations that we're always looking at are, management and security of our network versus the ease of access to that content for the end user, the students and the teachers. And that's, in standardization across the district because of limited resources to support it primarily. I mean, we are a Windows district, and that's partly due to those first two items there, management and security, and then standardization with limited manpower and resources to be able to support the devices that are out there. So we are looking at, tablets and mobile apps, smartphones even, but how does that all fit into the big picture? And we love some of the potential of those devices. We recognize that, but want to take it slow and careful and incrementally, that we don't get into a situation we don't want to be in with those. So with our tablets, if we could, the new Windows 8 based tablets are really what we're looking at more, so that teachers could use those to, on our network and be able to access the same resources that they're able to from their desktops or laptops, but still be able to use some of those applications that are being developed for the tablets. As I said earlier, we've implemented some different things in the classrooms that can be done on desktop laptops, but also have apps available that teachers could use, but again, are primarily only developed for Apple or iPads. So I really would like to see more on the Windows from those vendors for our district. And, looking at a change in types of devices, we are facing the end of life for Windows XP next April. That is going to be it's a big issue, a huge concern for our district, because we have a majority of our machines are still on XP. And whether we're going to be able to upgrade those to 7, some of the devices are too old to do so. We are looking at other options such as thin client and things like that. But Windows XP and the lack of support after, I think it's April of next year, is a big concern for us and financial concern. We are looking at cloud computing, and we are doing some virtualization of our servers here in Rio Rancho. We would like to have some kind of cloud, maybe even Rio Rancho cloud, for the students to even access and do some more of that kind of collaboration and saving of information there. We mentioned the Bring Your Own Device that's being piloted at Cyber Academy, but that might be one way to increase our number of devices for the students and the accessibility if we only have to supplement. There's some debate on whether that really works, and we're looking at that. Of course, Ebooks, and of course all of this is limited by our funding sources and limited funding we need for supporting, refreshing these devices and the professional development for teachers, all of which, it's hard to prioritize but we are looking at how to prioritize what we need and versus what we really want to do. But
we're going to stop and read some of these chats.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Are you moving more to performance-based assessment as opposed to MCSR? MC?
Can't see.
So are you moving more and more to performance-based assessment as opposed to
multiple choice?
Multiple choice.
Okay.
Yeah.
Selected response, etc. Yes. Obviously, well, with the Common Core, our assessment, here's the good news, in the state of New Mexico, it's a very, in terms of NAEP, it's probably within the top, on mathematics, top 7 or 8 most difficult tests. We already had that. The good news is we don't have as big of a jump to make. Our ELA is a little more average-like. We have a bigger jump there. We've got to raise the bar. We know that. How do you see big data impacting your data assessment? Oh.
Okay, so the question was, how do you see big data impacting your data assessment?
It's that idea the idea of what do we have control and what we don't, what we have control and what we don't, what's on our span of control. The state is, we have a new platform. We actually haven't had our plan approved, but assessment generally in the state's changing overnight. We've been working on assessment through a data-driven classroom for, gosh, I've been working on it for 10 years, and we've developed our own tool actually at one point in time. But we use data-driven classroom for looking at assessment and student monitoring of progress. But big data, boy, everyone's in transition because obviously we have our state assessment, we have a bridge assessment to the Common Core, and then we'll have Parks show up. So to have any longitudinal data on students is going to be interesting. We're moving to a VAM type approach in the state. The problems around that. Let's see what else.
The assumption, since you're working with Park, how do you feel about technology-enhanced items for assessing your students?
I feel really good about it. In fact, what my big concern here is that I've seen states dropping out of the Park consortium. The Common Core, the opportunity that we have as a state and nation is slipping away the more and more we have these problems. In other words, money. Number two, implementation. And those are big issues. I think we need to stay the course. I believe that is a tool that's going to help our students, but we need to change because our students need the skills. Our teachers need to understand what skills those are. So no, we're on top of that. We've seen those items. We are training our teachers up in understanding those. But I don't think our parents understand totally how this is going to impact proficiency. So I think we're going to see, like New York did, this drop in proficiency. And for our district, that's going to be a big issue because we've had high proficiencies. And when these students start taking on these tasks that are at a much higher level and they're not successful. We gave an actual item to a group of AP students last year. These are our highest point. And by the way, we have a high-level AP class to the point where we have kids going off to UNM to take a higher calc class after AP Calc 1 and 2, or A and B, and they could not pass 50% of the items. So we really need, well, they could, maybe it's like 60, but there were items they couldn't even address, and it was more around, obviously, the application of the math. So we have a lot of work to do. Did we answer the one on?
The next one is, how interested are you in
Go ahead. Yeah.
How interested are you in collaboration software versus instructional content? I would say that we're equally interested, I think, or we should be. Students, we need to work on how we're going to promote this project-based learning and the collaboration between student to student, not just students to teachers or teachers to teachers, but all that needs to be addressed, and we need ways to make that easy and accessible for students and teachers. So I guess to answer that question, I'm very interested in both of those.
This is Mark. I'll interject just quickly. I think what we're seeing is that there are some resources out there that combine the two, so it's not necessarily either or. It's yes right. and you can have start with content that's provided from a provider that then empowers students and teachers to create and modify content and collaborate on top of it.
Exactly. Yeah, that's ideal.
Well, we're a professional learning community. We've been so since on Common Ground I've been trying to push that since 2003. You know how hard that is in a high school. We're almost there. Mm-hmm. Most independent contractors have gone under to another profession. But I think if you look at collaboration software, that's how we're going to operate in the future to some degree.
I think we've got time for the two final questions here. So let's go to the ebook question, then we'll come back to the other. So how are you planning on the management of ebooks? And I suppose of the content on those ebooks.
Yeah, well, I guess this is a quick and easy answer. I did list ebooks because we're having a lot of conversation about that exact question. How will we manage it? What kinds of ebooks are we going to look at? How would we provide those to the students? But I do picture a day where you issue some kind of device to a student that has all the books that they need on there. Where are we in that process? The very beginning stages. So But I do envision something like that where students would, how nice would it be to have a device with all their textbooks that they need, but honestly, how are we planning on managing it? I don't really have an answer for that question at this point, but it's something we need to look at.
Okay.
The next.
Yeah, actually there are two related questions, so we could probably answer them together, and we'll make this our final question. So as we shift, I think, student experience to web-based and cloud-based opportunities, how are you looking at the issues of student data, whether it's and having it hosted, whether it be non-sensitive, non-personal data, or whether it be personally identifiable and sensitive data? And this is an issue that SI is looking at a lot right now, as we're seeing more and more attention to this in the field. So I'd be real interested in how you guys are seeing this data and data privacy issue.
Well, obviously we're very concerned about privacy of any confidential or sensitive data. So it is, one of the reasons we're not currently allowing or using any cloud-based products with students has to do with those privacy issues. But we would like to have some kind of controlled cloud that we would use for our district.
Now, you said you weren't using it for those reasons. Is that because you've looked at the sort of the terms of some of those cloud services and you're not comfortable with them, or have you just sort of made a default decision that that at this time you're not ready for it? Because I think that there are many providers with terms that will protect the privacy and security, and so I'm just curious, your criteria or your experience looking at providers.
Well, to be honest, our IT department is very strict in access to ensure the safety and security, and they are looking at different cloud-based solutions, and we have not yet implemented any.
I think we're in the beginning stages. I think there are other districts I know there are districts farther along. My brother-in-law teaches in West Lake up in Austin. So I understand where we need to go. We want to get there. Resource is always an issue in terms of both staff to support and costs. We spend 1% of our budget, and that's of our $100 million budget goes to technology. That's including all salaries, all fiber optic coming in, all the service and supports, ISPs. That is just not going to get us where we need to be. So we have a district technology plan, but we have a gap between the plan and reality in terms of resource. So at least the superintendent level, we're currently now looking at how do we close that gap.
Got it.
And it's going to require more network. It's going to require more support within the network team administration. Between our network engineer has given us a recommendation for additional support there, and we have not fulfilled that position. Without that, I think we're going to have some problems.
I'll end with this quick anecdote before we thank you. My wife just started a new job, and her employer's training program provided everybody with a device for the couple of days of training. And they said that they had been spending $250,000 a year on paper for just for those couple of days of training for each new employee. And the devices and moving to electronic has saved them, obviously a lot of money. So I think it's just a lesson for all to keep in mind that, how do we shift from technology being a supplemental to being a substitute and helping us do things in different ways. And I know that I'm sure you're looking at that. That's certainly what a lot of the SI member companies are trying to do, and part of what we can do with technology. I think it's the transition that's very difficult.
Well, we would love to see and hear from others, because I just got through facing the dreaded lesson plan common or unit plan issue across the district this size, rolled out in 5 days. And so you know what happens with that knee-jerk reaction. So we need to plan, work differently amongst the teachers, in terms of some of the Common Core and rollout. I agree with you 100%. We just looked at a registration tool. We do registration still, for example, we mail out packets. Well, we'll take those exact dollars and put them into purchasing a software program where parents can register online. So we've got some really good things happening in the classroom. We have a ways to go. We've sort of been falling behind the pace a little bit here due to all the technology dollars at the state of New Mexico have shrunk. We used to have technology dollars coming from the state. That's gone. So we're going to need to look at grants and other resources to support this. And then on the instructional side, I have about $500,000 to adopt mathematics in a 17,000 student district right now. That's not going to even begin to think about ongoing costs and support in terms of moving to an electronic, resource.
Yeah, no, that's very challenging, to say the least.
Yeah, it's very, and they've cut it from $1.5 million to $500,000 over the last 3 years. So that's the instructional side.
Wow.
In terms of per student. Yeah.
Well, we could, I'm sure, spend another hour going even more in depth on some of these issues, but I want to thank Carl and Karen very much for taking the time and being so open and sharing what you're doing in Rio Rancho and your experiences and needs. So thank you very much. I want to thank Fred Woodward and Amprey Associates for helping produce these and helping us work to bring Rio Rancho School District to the SI membership. Stay tuned for upcoming announcements about the next in our series of webinars. We're currently working to schedule one with the Buffalo, New York School District. And I want to thank also LaDerby for helping produce this. So with that, we'll say good afternoon to everyone, and thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. We were 1 minute over. That's not bad. How do we save the questions? Can we save a cut and paste that over to a Word document or a text document? I don't think we are. All right, I think we captured it. I thought it was a good question. I think the question that said, here's the one I wanted you to think on, and as you start to, and it's more a CNI more than anything else, but it's all of us. What pedagogical changes are you making based on the technology?
Thank you. Please stand by.